Rocket Lab isn't trying to beat SpaceX at its own game. It's building a completely different business, and that's exactly why it might win. Let me tell you a story about David and Goliath, except this David never actually wanted to fight Goliath in the first place. When most people hear about a commercial rocket company, their mind jumps immediately to SpaceX. Rockets landing on floating platforms, Mars ambitions, headlines every other week. And so when Rocket Lab enters the conversation, the instinct is to line them up side by side and ask, who's winning? But that comparison misses the entire point. Rocket Lab has quietly built one of the most interesting business models in the space industry, and it did so not by charging head-on into SpaceX's territory, but by carefully choosing a different battlefield. In this video, we're going to break down exactly how Rocket Lab makes money, why it has multiple revenue streams instead of relying on rockets alone, and how it has positioned itself in a market that is projected to explode in value over the coming decade. This isn't a story about who has the biggest rocket. It's a story about smart business strategy, diversification, and knowing your customer. So let's follow the money and understand what makes this company tick. Here's the first thing that surprises people. In the third quarter of 2024, Rocket Lab generated $106 million in revenue, but that money didn't all come from launching rockets. Roughly 60% came from launch services, and about 40% came from something called space systems. Now pause on that for a second, because it's the single most important fact in this entire story. Most people assume a rocket company simply lives and dies by how often it launches rockets. But Rocket Lab has deliberately built a second engine for its business, one that keeps generating money even when the rockets aren't flying. Think of it like a restaurant that also sells its famous sauce in grocery stores. On a slow night at the dining tables, the bottled sauce keeps ringing up sales. That 40% of revenue from space systems is Rocket Lab's bottled sauce, and it is the reason this company is far more resilient than a pure launch business would be. This diversification is not an accident. It is the core of a strategy that many investors have found remarkably clever, and we'll spend the next several minutes unpacking exactly how each of these two engines works. Let's start with the launch side, and specifically with the Electron rocket. This is the workhorse that put Rocket Lab on the map. Now, when you compare it to SpaceX's Falcon 9, the numbers look almost comical. A dedicated Electron launch costs around $7.5 million. A Falcon 9 launch costs about $67 million. On paper, that makes Electron look like the cheap option. And in raw price, it is. But here's the trick, and it's a beautiful piece of business thinking. Electron is not designed to lift the same cargo as Falcon 9. It's built to carry small satellites, payloads weighing up to about 300 kilograms into low Earth orbit. Falcon 9 can haul enormous loads, but if you're a small company that just needs to put one modest satellite into a very specific orbit, flying on a Falcon 9 is like renting an entire cargo ship to deliver a single package. You'd have to wait for the ship to fill up with other people's packages, and you'd go wherever the ship was already going. Electron, by contrast, is the dedicated courier. You get your own vehicle, your own schedule, and your own exact destination. For certain customers, that control is worth paying for, even at a higher price per kilogram. Rocket Lab understood that not every customer wants the cheapest ride. Some customers want the ride that goes exactly where they need, exactly when they need it. Talk is cheap in the rocket business because rockets are famously hard to fly. So let's look at what Rocket Lab has actually accomplished. As of 2024, the company had completed more than 50 Electron launches, with a success rate of around 95%. That statistic deserves a moment of respect. It makes Electron the second most frequently launched orbital rocket in the United States, behind only SpaceX's Falcon 9. Think about that ranking. In an industry crowded with ambitious startups that have promised the world and delivered explosions, Rocket Lab quietly climbed to the number 2 spot in launch frequency. And in this business, a proven track record isn't just a nice statistic to put on a slide. It is a sales tool. When you're a satellite operator with a payload worth tens of millions of dollars, you don't want to gamble it on an unproven rocket. You want the company that has flown dozens of times and brought its customers home safely. Reliability becomes a competitive moat. Every successful launch adds to a reputation that new competitors simply cannot buy overnight. They have to earn it, flight by flight, and that takes years. Rocket Lab has that head start, and in a trust-based business, a head start in trust is worth a fortune. Now let's turn to that second engine, the Space Systems division, because this is where the story gets genuinely interesting from a business standpoint. Over the years, Rocket Lab didn't just build rockets, it went shopping. It acquired a series of companies with names like Sinclair Interplanetary, Advanced Solutions, and Planetary Systems Corporation. Individually, those acquisitions might sound like small technical purchases. Together, they add up to something powerful. They gave Rocket Lab the ability to manufacture satellite components and even entire spacecraft in-house. This is what business strategists call vertical integration. Instead of just offering the ride to space, Rocket Lab can now build the thing that goes to space and sell all the little parts that make it work, from reaction wheels that steer satellites to the separation systems that release them. And here's the genius part. Rocket Lab can sell these components and spacecraft to customers even when those customers plan to launch on a competitor's rocket. Read that again. Rocket Lab makes money off SpaceX launches because a satellite riding a Falcon 9 might be full of Rocket Lab parts. So whether a customer launches with Rocket Lab or with its biggest rival, Rocket Lab can still get a slice of the revenue. That is a remarkably resilient position to be in. At the heart of the space systems business is Rocket Lab's Photon spacecraft platform. Instead of just launching a customer's satellite, Rocket Lab can offer to build the entire satellite for them using the Photon design. Imagine you're a company that wants to do Earth observation or run some experiment in orbit, but you don't have the expertise to design and build your own spacecraft. That's a huge barrier. Rocket Lab says, don't worry about it. We'll build the spacecraft, we'll integrate your equipment, and we'll even launch it and operate it. This turns Rocket Lab from a taxi service into a full-service provider. And full-service providers command higher margins and stickier customer relationships. Once a customer relies on you for the spacecraft itself, they're far more likely to keep coming back for future missions. It also opens the door to bigger, more ambitious contracts, including work for government agencies and deep space missions. This is the difference between selling someone a single train ticket and selling them a complete travel package with the hotel, the tours, and the transportation all bundled together. The package deal is worth more, and it locks in the relationship. Photon is how Rocket Lab moves up the value chain, capturing more of what each customer is willing to spend. So far, we've talked about how Rocket Lab avoided a head-on fight with SpaceX. But that's changing, and this is the most ambitious chapter of the story. Rocket Lab is developing a much larger rocket called Neutron. While Electron carries small payloads, Neutron is designed to carry around 8 tons. And crucially, it's being built for full reusability, meaning the rocket can fly, come back, and fly again. The target price is roughly $50 million per launch, and the company is aiming for a first flight in the medium lift category. Now, why does this matter? Because the medium lift market, the market for those heavier payloads, is currently dominated almost entirely by SpaceX's Falcon 9. That's the big pool of money, especially with the explosion of satellite internet constellations that need lots of satellites carried up in batches. With Neutron, Rocket Lab is finally stepping into that arena. It's a bold, risky move. Building a bigger, reusable rocket is extraordinarily hard, and delays in this industry are the norm, not the exception. But if Neutron succeeds, Rocket Lab transforms from a niche, small satellite specialist into a serious competitor for the largest, most lucrative launch contracts. It would give the company a rocket for the small jobs, a rocket for the medium jobs, and a whole business selling spacecraft and components on top. That's a very complete offering. Let me be clear about the strategy here, because it's easy to see Neutron as Rocket Lab suddenly deciding to pick a fight it might lose. But look closer, and you'll see a calculated business decision. Rocket Lab spent years building credibility with Electron. It learned how to design rockets, how to manufacture them efficiently, how to launch them reliably, and how to run the complex logistics of spaceflight. Neutron isn't the company's first attempt at a rocket. It's the company's second act, built on everything learned from the first. That dramatically lowers the risk, compared to a brand new startup trying to build a big reusable rocket from scratch. Furthermore, the demand is clearly there. The rise of satellite megaconstellations means there is enormous appetite for medium-lift launches. And relying on a single provider, SpaceX, makes many customers and governments nervous. They want alternatives. They want competition to keep prices honest and schedules flexible. Rocket Lab is positioning itself as that credible second option. In business, being the strong number two in a booming market is often a phenomenal place to be. You don't have to win everything. You just have to capture a meaningful share of a rapidly growing pie. And there's plenty of pie to go around. Now let's zoom out and talk about the size of the opportunity. Because a great business model in a shrinking market is a trap, while even a decent model in a booming market can print money. The small satellite launch market was valued at about $8.9 billion in 2023. By 2030, it's projected to grow to roughly $30.1 billion. That's more than tripling in size in about 7 years. What's driving that growth? Three big forces. First, satellite internet constellations. Companies racing to blanket the planet with connectivity from orbit. Second, Earth observation. Everything from monitoring crops and climate to tracking shipping and security. And third, the Internet of Things, a future where sensors and devices around the globe talk to satellites overhead. All of these require putting more and more objects into space, which means more launches and more spacecraft. Rocket Lab has planted itself directly in the middle of this expanding market. It offers the launches, it offers the spacecraft, and it offers the components. As the market grows, Rocket Lab has multiple ways to grow along with it. This is the crucial context. Even if Rocket Lab never overtakes SpaceX, a company well-positioned in a market tripling in size can build a very substantial business. So let's answer the question everyone keeps asking. How does Rocket Lab actually compete against a giant like SpaceX? And the answer is that it competes by refusing to compete on SpaceX's terms. SpaceX's superpower is scale and low cost per kilogram for large payloads. Trying to beat that directly would be foolish. Instead, Rocket Lab built three separate advantages. First, it owns the dedicated small satellite niche, offering customers control, precise orbits, and flexible scheduling that a giant rideshare rocket simply can't match. Second, it diversified into space systems, so it earns money from the entire industry, including from its rivals' launches. And third, it built a track record of reliability that new entrants can't replicate quickly. Add the upcoming Neutron rocket, and you have a company that's playing a long, patient game of expanding its offerings step by step. This is the essence of smart, competitive positioning. You don't attack a stronger opponent where they're strongest. You find the spaces they've left open, you dominate those spaces, and you slowly build the strength to expand. Rocket Lab's competitive edge isn't a single feature. It's a whole portfolio of well-chosen positions that together make the company hard to displace and well-prepared for whatever the market does next. Step back from the rockets for a moment because Rocket Lab's story contains lessons that apply far beyond the space industry. Lesson 1 is the power of diversification. By building two revenue engines instead of one, Rocket Lab protected itself from the volatility that comes with any single business line. When launch is slow, space systems can carry the load, and vice versa. Lesson 2 is the wisdom of vertical integration. By owning the pieces up and down the supply chain, Rocket Lab captures more value from every customer, and even earns money from its competitors. Lesson 3 is the importance of choosing your battlefield. Rocket Lab succeeded not by charging at the strongest player, but by owning a niche the giant ignored, and then patiently building toward bigger ambitions. And lesson 4 is that reputation and reliability are assets you can't buy, only earn. And once earned, they become a defensive moat that protects your business for years. Whether you're evaluating a company to invest in, running a small business, or simply trying to understand how the modern economy works, these principles show up again and again. Rocket Lab just happens to demonstrate them at 27,000 kilometers per hour. Before we wrap up, let's be honest and balanced, because no business story is complete without the risks. Rocket Lab is not guaranteed to succeed. The Neutron rocket is a massive undertaking, and delays or technical setbacks could hurt the company's momentum and its finances. Developing rockets burns enormous amounts of cash, and the company has to fund this ambition while managing its existing operations. The competition is also intensifying, with other companies eyeing the same small satellite market that Rocket Lab pioneered. And the entire space industry remains dependent on customer demand actually materializing at the pace analysts predict. If those satellite constellations get delayed or scaled back, the growth story could soften. So a thoughtful observer holds two ideas at once. On one hand, Rocket Lab has built a genuinely clever, diversified business with real revenue, a strong track record, and a foothold in a booming market. On the other hand, it faces real execution risk, real competition, and the enormous challenge of scaling up. That tension between opportunity and risk is exactly what makes this such a fascinating company to study. It's a business that has done a lot right, positioned itself intelligently, and now faces the hardest test of all, which is delivering on its most ambitious promises. So let's tie the whole story together. Rocket Lab makes its money through two connected engines. The launch services engine, powered by the reliable Electron rocket, dominates the dedicated small satellite niche by offering control and precision that giant rideshare rockets can't match. And the Space Systems engine, built through smart acquisitions, sells spacecraft and components across the entire industry, earning revenue even from missions that fly on competitor rockets. On top of that foundation, the company is building the Neutron rocket to reach into the larger, more lucrative medium-lift market that SpaceX currently rules. All of this unfolds inside a market projected to triple in size, giving Rocket Lab room to grow along multiple paths at once. The key insight is that Rocket Lab never tried to be a smaller copy of SpaceX. It built a fundamentally different, more diversified business, one that competes on its own terms in the spaces its larger rival left open. Whether it ultimately becomes a true rival to SpaceX or settles in as the strong number two in a booming industry, one thing is clear. Rocket Lab is a masterclass in how a company can find and hold its ground against a dominant competitor by being smart, patient, and diversified. And that's a lesson worth carrying with you, no matter what industry you're watching.